What's happening, everybody? If everybody's having a fantastic Saturday, chances are if you're watching this on Saturday, your weekend is not going quite as well as you had hoped. So I wanted to ask you guys a question. You know, one of the things that I had posted up about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, was modifications. You know, where are you at in terms of mods? How much are you willing to spend on modifications? And Mark's first in. What's up, Mark? And it was kind of funny, you know. Basically, the walking around number was $6,000 in modifications. But what I found pretty interesting, so Zen, what's up, man? What I found pretty interesting was just the sheer number of responses where the number was basically revolving around that $6,000 mark, if you were to put the bell curve in play. So then I got to think a little bit more. Well, wait a minute. What are you willing to spend on the car itself? What kind of performance are you willing to compromise on for cost? I guess the reason why I'm asking this is because I recently did the video on the Corvette, the C8 Corvette, and it blew my mind when I started to look at the income versus the expenditure for that car from back in the day. Now I get it, modern cars have all this new technology and there's so many other things going on with these cars, and to the point of, well, what would the car cost back then? It would cost about what it costs today back then in like dollars. But with all of these safety gadgets and emissions gizmos and all the trickery with the computer, have any of you guys taken a look at the cost of modern cars and just went, at some point, I got to give up. There's no way I can continue with this lifestyle moving forward if I'm going to buy something new. So let me break it down for you like this. And I'm only going to use the figures that I used for the Corvette video because they're still the figures that are fresh in my mind. I really did pull just the first year that popped into my head was the 1979 Corvette, or at least that was the year for the Vet that I just pulled figures on. And you can talk about the value of the dollar, the buying power of the dollar, and all this other stuff. The reality is that the median salary in 1979 was equivalent to about $62-ish thousand today. Whereas today, that median salary is roughly $53,000, or more to the point, basically 20% greater back then than it is now. Then you take into account the fact that the car itself would have been just, you know, Kentucky windage this thing, $35,000 in those figures back then converted to today. But you would have to then adjust that price down to say, $38,000 back then, you'd have to adjust it down to $34,000 to kind of play with that ability for the dollar to actually buy something. And the reason why you'd adjust it down is because, well, the dollar was stronger back then, so you have to adjust the cost down. Anyway, the long and short of it is, it was significantly less money in a period of time when there were significantly less distractions. Think of it like this. Back then, what did you have? You had a bar, you had a restaurant, you had the freaking Regal Beagle, you had nothing really to do. You had a really cool car, some gold chains, and your job, and that was basically it. Nowadays, you've got every conceivable type of video game, virtual reality, you've got online everything, you've got cell phone bills and internet bills and all these other bills that are eating into an income that is already 20% less in terms of buying power than what you had back then. Add to that the fact that the cost of the car itself is in real terms twice at least what it was back in the day. And that was one point that I forgot to, I didn't vocalize the point properly. The value of the Corvette to the buyer in 1979 was, say, $34,000. The average selling price of the C8 Corvette in the second quarter of 2020 was $82,000. Figure $35,000 times 2 and then add 10 grand. And you could literally dollar for dollar buy yourself a Corvette, your buddy a Corvette, and then have $10,000 left over to buy each other a couple of motorcycles or something. That's the difference in cost, and that's the difference in terms of buying power that you had back then versus what you have now. So when I put it in that perspective, yeah, it kind of got me to thinking, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, you would almost be foolish to buy a new car, especially with all of the other distractions that can keep you entertained. And the other add-on to that is add on to the fact that, well, that because of the cost of the cars themselves, the car hobby is basically on its way out. A lot of folks just aren't wanting to get into this game because the actual cost, the number of hours that they have to work to generate enough income to purchase that car and then to purchase the modifications and everything else is starting to, and probably already has for a lot of folks, you may be included in this, that effort is far and away, or has far and away exceeded the entertainment value that you get, the level of satisfaction that you get from a build or of just putting something together that makes you happy to drive. Your cost of entry in terms of hours out of your life is eerily close to, well, pretty much all of the work that you do. And so I get it, and the more I started to dive into this, the more I started to understand really where some of my frustration has been lying with all of this. You see guys, and I get a lot of questions about specific tuning questions, or I get questions about modifications and getting 600 horsepower, 700 horsepower, 500 horsepower to the wheels, all this other stuff. I get those questions all the time, and I try to answer them as best I can. But one of the things that I got to looking at was, my God, if you are modifying this thing, how much money are you making to be able to modify something that you really should sell and trade up and get the next car up? It would only make sense, and if you needed to get rid of it or wanted to get rid of it, got bored of it or what have you, you can still recoup that cost. And I don't like looking at it from that point of view very often, but when I started looking into the actual cost, the number of hours that you had to work to buy that car from back in the day versus today, and obviously that cost, the cost of the vehicle per cost of the average salary has been kind of becoming more and more in parity, and now it's, in some cases far and away beyond it. The thing that I was looking at was, how much does it really cost you in terms of the final dollars when you start to include other bills like cell phone bill, cable bill, internet, streaming services? All of these things are just add-ons to your normal rent, food, electricity, and water, and trash. It's just crazy how many bills you got to pay today, and then that car costing so much more. A lot of folks look at it as they just flat out can't and won't be able to afford it. Plus, because less people are getting into the hobby, there's less of that camaraderie left to it. So you don't have the same support that you seem to have had back in the day, at least so far as I can tell. And I get it, we've got forum sites and all this other stuff, but the reality is that guys are keeping their cars for much less time, and they're getting out from underneath them as soon as either A, their lease is up, or B, something goes catastrophically wrong with the thing and they try to just ditch it as quickly as they can. Trade it in on a Jeep or trade it in on a truck or something like that, and lesson learned, right? So anyway, let me check in with you guys though. That's kind of the idea that I was kind of working on coming into this chat, and a lot of times after I do one of the My Thoughts videos, I'll come away from the My Thoughts video with maybe a little bit different perspective on things. And so, okay, well, what's the perspective that I came away with on this? Well, being Mopar fans as we are, and sports car fans in general, what would be the absolute best value dollar proposition? What's the best bang for the buck? Well, freaking Hellcat. I mean, I know I hate to wear out a broken record when it comes to these cars, but in looking at the whole automotive spectrum right now, I got to looking at different cars, and if I were to get rid of the Hellcat, what would I get? That was one of the things that I was talking about in an earlier chat. And the Vette would pop up every once in a while, or a Supra, or something old school, or pick something ZL1 had come into the conversation. And so there were a lot of different things that I was looking at as far as, okay, what would be another cool car? But nothing came in at a price point that I could stomach. And one of those cars that I was looking at is probably it's up near the very top in terms of just fun to drive cars that I have ever driven, and that's the C7 Z06. With a 7-speed manual, that car ergonomically fits me like a glove. And I got to thinking, man, that would be a really fun car to pick up, because it would scratch an itch that I've had now for quite some time, and that is that I miss my Gen 2 Vipers quite a bit. And one of the things about the C7 Z06 is that with a tune and a couple of other massages, the car felt a lot like, in terms of acceleration, it felt a lot like my ACR. Absolutely would outhandle it, and it had about the same power. At least as much as the ACR had when it was a lot of fun to drive. And so I was thinking, man, C7 Z06 would really scratch the itch. I've owned 3 Vipers. This would be my 3rd Vette. I love the Hellcat, but let's face it, there's some things that you just can't really get away with the Hellcat that I could get away with the Vette. Primarily doing closed circuit racing, and at least closed circuit driving, which is something, again, that I miss quite a bit. But then reality struck. First of all, I can't afford the damn thing. It's $80-something thousand, $65,000, whatever the price is. They're still astronomically expensive. Number 2, you think I'm gonna get back into circuit track racing? I got a mortgage now. I got things I gotta pay for that I didn't have to pay for in the past, and I can't afford tires. Circuit track racing will go through a set of tires in an afternoon. Try pricing one set of tires out for a Z06. And when you come back to consciousness, we can talk. The next thing that I got to thinking about is, oh my goodness, here we go again with a car that is literally no good for road trips. And that's one of the things that I love about the Challenger, is that I can point the thing in a certain direction, load it up with laundry, and just head there and have a good time doing it. Big, comfy car that happens to run low to mid tens. Not too shabby. And there's no other car that's out there. I even entertained a GT500 at one point, and then boy, did I come to my senses pretty quickly after I spanked one the other day. So there's that. And the funniest thing about all of this is that I got to looking at costing and prices and just general things that you spend money on. You ever wonder where your money goes? Like, payday comes and I'm broke. Like, but I don't have any bills aren't really something that, but here we are, payday and I'm broke. I don't know and that's how I know what everybody's going through. I'm the same as you guys are, trust me. But nothing met the budget. The only car that did was the Hellcat. And the reason why the Hellcat did, number 1, is I bought it, even though it had hardly any miles on it, I did buy it used, and I bought it right. So it came in at a good price, does everything I could ever want the car to do. I'm never, probably ever going to get back into actual circuit track racing. And if I were to do it, I'd get a C6 because race car. So anyway, let me check in with you guys, and then we'll get back to my incoherent ramblings. Michael Corleone is in with the Armflex Nitro crew saying, "Sup, B?" Rift is in. What's up? Haas saying, "I got $5,000 to spend on my car." Hey. Virginia saying, "Hey, good evening. I've spent almost 20 grand on my Hellcat mod so far." Sounds about right. So saying, for willing to spend, I always look at the grade above. In my case, it's a 5.7. So as long as I keep it under the price of a scat, I'm in the clear. I like it. That's what I have been telling folks to do for a long time. So smart move. Mark saying, "I'm more than ready to hurt my wallet on the RT, but if Dodge gives me a steal of a deal on a 392, I might have to give her up before I get too deep in the hole. I would recommend it." Carly has 3,900 on the odometer. It's a nice low mileage 5.7, man. It'd be tough to part ways with that. They're nice little cars, man. Riff saying, "I got my Hellcat for 48 grand with 8,000 miles on it in December of 2018. Damn, you bought yours right after I got mine. And we paid the same, basically, for the cars. So, cool. Good deal." Arthur saying, "Excellent. My thoughts video on the C8. Had to watch it 3 times. Thanks, Arthur. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate the kind words. Yeah, that one was one where, that one actually was pretty easy to make. A lot of those, by the way, y'all know that I don't do any editing. I don't even have editing software. So anytime you see editing done on my end, it's all done in pause editing. And to be honest, some of the My Thoughts videos, I'll start out, it'll take me 2.5 hours to put together a 10-minute video because I'm catching myself saying something stupid, or I'll misspeak, or I'll get ahead of myself, or I'll just kind of buzz off like I normally do. So anyway, thank you very much. So saying, "Love the Super, but at that price, I can't support the big price tag." I see exactly. And let me tell you something about the Supra. And I will go on record as saying this. If the Supra, instead of being 50 grand, were 40 grand, there would be one sitting in my garage right now. All kidding aside. Black on black on black, sitting in that garage right now at 40. I just cannot wrap my lips around a $50,000 price tag on that car. And granted, I mean, it's as cute as a marshmallow, but I just can't make the transition over to that car at $52,000. Hand to God, I would way sooner buy a used Hellcat that I know is practically bomb-proof in terms of durability than spend 52 grand on a new Supra. I mean, that's just the way that I feel about it. I know the platform with the Hellcat is a little bit long in the tooth, but look, it's built like a tank. It weighs about as much as a tank. They never fail. And for that amount of money, you get a whole lot of street cred. So, love me some Supra. I just want to run up and tickle one every time I see it. I just love those cars. I got such a crush on them, I can't see straight. But at the price that they're getting for them, I'm not going to say it broke my heart. I was happy to have the car in existence just to begin with, but I just can't bring myself to it. Saying the new NSX is way overpriced. Yeah, it is. Cal saying, "Sold my 1320 Hellcat for the cost it takes to mod up a 392. You can just buy a Hellcat, although at times I miss a 392. There are a lot of times where I miss a 392, but bro, let me just tell you this. If you ever get to missing your 392, just put your Hellcat in 500 horse mode and take it for a spin." Gary's saying, "What up, B? Got the arm flex." So saying, I'd look into the 1320 Scat use because it'd be a great street car. And I probably wouldn't go through daily wheels as fast as I would on a Cat. Yeah, probably not. Good call. Roy, thank you very much. That one popped up out of nowhere. I didn't even see that one pop up. Roy saying, "Here's 10 for your bills, B." I like it. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. Yeah, man, it's crazy when you start looking at just the number of bills, the number of distractions, the number of other ways to meet people and to do social things. The car thing really carrying the same weight that it used to, which is a bit of a bummer in a lot of ways, but it is what it is. Can't really go around that. What I'm hoping is that the EV stuff kind of starts to change that a little bit. There's a certain amount of, put you like this, there's a certain low tolerance to challenge resolution that I think people have today. And what I mean by that is you're not going to find people tuning a carburetor anymore. You're not going to find people fine tuning anything anymore. They're not going to, guys don't have their own tuning software. If this were 30 years ago and car culture is really hot and all that, you'd have guys that could rattle off their tune-up setups. If the technology were there to have HP tuners or Diablo, everybody would have it, and everybody would be somewhat proficient with tuning. You just don't see that so much anymore. And again, it's that challenge resolution tolerance that just seems to be so low. Guys will just say, "Oh, I'll just farm out the tuning to somebody that does it." And before you know it, guys are going to be like, "Well, I mean, the car is kind of worthless on the street. All it does is smoke the tires." EV stuff comes around, you don't even have to touch it. Convenience factor is second to none, and it does whatever it would do on a drag strip on the street. But you want to talk about expensive, see how I kind of weave that back into so for everything that's new coming down the pipeline, a lot of those are EVs. And so I started looking at, well, what are the options? Let's not get too crazy here, but what about the Lightning that's coming out? Dual motor, supposed to have a bunch of power, but it's going to cost a lot of money. I know that the tradesman version of that thing's going to check in at around 40-ish. Anyway, the higher end, higher performance version of that thing is going to come in at probably 65 or 75. That's a lot of money. I know it's going to be fast, but that's a lot of money for what it is, in essence, which is a truck. You look at the Stellantis, the STLA and small, medium, large STLA truck platforms. Again, lots of paper, and these things are still 2 to 3 years away. There's not enough excitement in the field right now to get me to get off of dead center where I'm at. And when I say dead center, I mean clean, fat, and happy right in the middle of Dodge Hellcat ownership. But thank you, Roy. I appreciate that, bud. Calvin's checking in, saying, "Hey, B, first time catching live. I like it. Thanks for stopping by, man." Steven's in. Saying, "What up, B? What up, man?" Big Chillin's asking, do you think the C8 is worth the cost? People that have them don't really race them. Big, let me just put it to you like this. Man, this burns me to say this because I don't like saying this about Corvette. I have a very strong emotional tie to Corvettes in general. Don't like it. Don't think it's worth the money. I think that it's a little too sanitized. More to your point, worth the cost depends. If you've got a bunch of disposable income, maybe it's worth the cost from a novelty standpoint, but from a driver's perspective, I don't think that it's quite made it to the party yet there. And when you add in the fact that, well, where it counts, in the real world at least, at a drag strip, the performance is very underwhelming. And you can say, again, like I said in the video, well, it's not a drag car, it's not a this, it's not a that. Look, you got people making YouTube money off of taking that car, putting nitrous on it, and taking it to a drag strip. Turbocharger kits on that car, taking it to the drag strip. You've got companies that are feeding their families on building up the transmission that's in that car for harder launches and bigger power. It's a drag race car if you get on the drag strip. And believe me when I tell you, there are a lot of Corvettes that go to that strip. The problem that I have with the C8 is that, to me, it seems like it's unfinished. To me, the C8 is very much like beta testing or a beta variant of that car. It's like they put it out into the world just to kind of see what was going to happen. How durable is it going to be? And then, okay, we're gonna make some more significant changes to this thing and get it right. Look, every manufacturer does that. This isn't anything new. This shouldn't come as any real surprise. But we're talking about the Corvette. The other thing that I don't like about the Corvette is that when I say that it looks unfinished, and when I say that it doesn't quite look like they did their homework, they finished like their part. What I'm trying to say is it looked like they kind of phoned it in. Look at the wheel back spacing. It doesn't look meaty the way that the C7 Z06 looked meaty. I'll put it to you another way. Remember how bad the C7 Stingray looked with the stock wheels? It looked like it had front wheels on the back of the car. Remember that? The weird didn't look good. It was a bad look. It looked like it had skipped leg day for 10 years. That's kind of what the C8 looks like to me. And with it being so flat and squat and down in the ground, I'm looking to have a wheel selection that looks a little bit more Diablo-esque, a little bit more Countach-esque. If you're going to look the part, you got to look the whole part. And again, the Corvette, it just looks like it skipped leg day. And that's the thing with me. I don't like that. So, is it worth the money? Not to me, because to me, the car has to have a certain look. It has to have a certain driving experience. And I'm not saying I'll never get there, because I'll eventually, I'm sure, warm up to it. But it just like it was rushed through production, and this is basically what we ended up with. And again, I'll go back to the front end and rear end treatments on that car. It looks like somebody it was designed literally from the middle of the car out, and then they got to the ends of it and they go, oh man, wait, we got to put a Corvette looking front end on this thing? I thought this was a clean slate. Oh, we have to tie this thing to the, crap. Frank, stop everything. We got to just just kind of make it look like the Vette that we just had, just make it work. That's the impression that I get of that car. It's like, okay, just send it out there. They'll love it. That's my thoughts on that thing. So saying, that Super was 35 to 40, I'd pull the trigger. Same here, to get one as well, but I'd have to get it in white with bronze rims. White does look good. Him saying the price of used cars is like my Scat Pack a lot. The Scat Packs are a lot of fun. It's arguably, I should say, a better car on the street. Steven saying I would buy a 1320 or a Scat in auto as a solid, reliable street strip car. Current Fox body owner, one of those in the back. But would be more than happy to make the Challenger jump one day. The cool thing about having a Fox body is that a Fox body is always a Fox body. They always ride like a Fox body. They always do Fox body things. So I'm trying to source a potential electrical draw issue with mine right now. It's very faint too, and I can't find it. It's driving me nuts. I spent most of the day today trying to chase down this electrical draw that will take, and it's not very much either, but it's just enough to where it can potentially drain the battery if I don't start the car every 2 weeks. It'll probably kill a battery if I don't start it every 2 weeks or so. So Normally I'm typically doing something with it and I'll start it and don't really ever notice it, but I hadn't messed with the car in quite a while and it killed it. So anyway, I thought, okay, well, I just redid the fans or the fan switches. Could it be the fan switch? Nope, no draw. Is it the MSD box? No, no draw there either. Not that I could tell anyway. And I'm going straight to the power lead on this because everything's run off of a key-on switch, basically a key-on trigger. And it was like, well, what the hell else could it be? I don't even know what else it could possibly be. But I don't know. For all I know, the car's been doing this forever. And like I say, I just haven't noticed it because I always started it and drove it. Ripped is asking a good question. Do you think the Tesla Plaid is worth the price for what it does? Rip puts it like this, buddy. You cannot build a car to do what the Plaid can do unless you spend enough money to buy yourself a Plaid and a used Hellcat in the process. You just can't do it. It doesn't work like that. Not with the civility and with the convenience and the peace of mind, mind you, which is a big chunk of why that Plaid is so attractive to me. You can't do that for the cost. Look at it like this. The Plaid can run low nines. It can be fueled up in your garage. It can be daily driven. It doesn't care what octane electricity you put in it. You'll never explode a transmission. You'll never send a rod going through a block. You never have to worry about anything with the car other than getting in it and driving it. I can't explain how much more enjoyable something is when you don't have to worry about it breaking. Hellcats come to mind, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because Hellcats, as long as you pin the crank, basically at stock boost levels, you can run the thing indefinitely, provided that you're just changing or keeping it with basic maintenance. You're not going to wear the thing out. Yeah, you're going to have certain component failures, but that's going to be because you've got 2,000 passes on the thing. So I wouldn't say, like, is the car worth it? Well, considering that it runs low nines, considering that it's as convenient as literally any other electrical appliance that you have in your house, and that you get a peace of mind from a complete no issue whatsoever, no thought will cross your mind about failure. Whereas if you have a low 9-second vehicle of any kind, the first thing, second thing, and third thing on your mind is that thing blowing up, breaking something every time that you drive it, and every time that you drive it in the manner in which you think that you had built it to be driven. Tesla, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And it will make passes at the drag strip in the mid 9-second range until you are bored with it. Can't say the same thing about internal combustion stuff. So is it worth it? If you can afford it, then absolutely it's worth it. But it's a big but. The cost of the thing is really, really too high. And at this stage of the game, I just can't say that it's worth it. But then again, good luck finding something that you can build to run 920s with that level of durability, with that level of confidence that you're not going to blow it up. Yeah, good luck doing that for $130,000. Oh, and by the way, if you like that $130,000 number, let me just tell you the murderer's row that $130,000-ish price range puts you in. First things first, it's going to put you in line with what will be the new Z06 at about $115,000, give or take. But Demons right now are trading at about $120,000 to $130,000. Mix in the Plaid along with pretty much anything else that's going to be coming down the pipe, like say a used Viper, I think is going for a little bit more than 130, but give or take around 130. Look at anything in that $130,000 price range, really, and from a performance standpoint, you're not going to touch it. From a classy standpoint, looking at BMWs and Mercedes-Benz, getting into the E63 and whatnot. Yeah, the thing is, though, that the Tesla's not going to have the interior quality that the European models are going to have. S7s and things like that are just a lot nicer to ride around in. But if you want to be the ultimate troll at the sushi bar, roll up in a Tesla Plaid. Big saying Hellcat Red Eye. So it's hanging out with Riff. Canada guy saying, hey, what's up, Canada guy saying, how's it going, bro? I thought I would stop in and see what's up. Still waiting for the border to open up to grab some parts from my USA address. I like it. Yeah, hopefully it'll be opened up here pretty soon. Sovereign saying, hey, B Mason, what's up? What's up, man? So I was asking, asking Rift about his cat. Let's see. Challenger 50 saying, I was at a car show where there were about 5 C8 Vettes and one C7 Z06 sitting beside them. Everybody was lusting over the C7. It had character and looked so much better than the C8s did. So one of the things about the Vette that's, by the way, if you're new to the channel, the shop is very near Velocito. It's a pretty clean night out tonight. There's a lot of folks that are heading out to some local spots to make some hits. So, that sounded healthy. Anyway, so when you hear that, that's what's going on. There's some very popular test hit spots very close to here. The thing about the Corvette that's always been its one of many of its trump cards in this is that you could always get a Vette with an automatic transmission. Boom, that's number one. Number two, Vettes were always pretty docile to drive unless you broke your foot off in them. They were always a good street car, and more to the point, they were almost always very, very durable cars. To a fault in some cases, with a couple of modifications like the detent mod, an aftermarket shifter, making sure that you are keeping the clutch fluid clean, things like that. Those cars are, for lack of a better way of putting it, they're practically bomb-proof. So anyway, great cars, and I think that that perception leading up to the C7, up into the C7, I think with the C8, a lot of people saw the C8 as maybe fragile. There was a sense of unknown there, especially with the DCT, that dual clutch transmission. And with so many people not really feeling that type of powertrain, with so many people not really trusting it, I think that may have also kept some people out of the market as well. So I'm saying Scat's his style. Like he's saying, hey. Sovereign saying parasitic draw. Check the cigarette lighter. I did that. That's one of the first things I checked. Yeah, parasitic draw. I can't figure out what it is. There's one thing that I think it might be. And it might be the radio. I haven't pulled the fuse on the radio, so I need to see if it's that. But there's something that I just can't freaking figure out. But yeah, no, that was the first thing that I checked. I checked the cigarette. Okay, get a load of this. Check the cigarette lighter. Check the glove box light to make sure the switch was working. Checked the flashlight to make sure, because my flashlight still works. Check the flashlight to make sure that it wasn't hanging on. All the lights in the car are LED, so it would have been a very light, but a very, very noticeable thing. And I just had all the lights turned off and was looking around. Tried checking power at the fuse box for the MSD box, power at the fuse box for the relay for the fans, literally listening for clicks. Obviously it's not clicking because with the key off, there's no power going to it. Have literally snooped around and looked at everything I could possibly think of or could possibly see to find. And I just, again, having hell with it. But the only exception to this is the radio, and I am willing to bet money that it's an issue with that radio. So, as they say, struggle continues. And you know, I'll get back around to it when I get a chance. Let's see, the next thing I'll be working on will be the Camaro, getting the instrument cluster out of that thing. Nitro saying, back in the dealer days, that was a huge issue. AB say he took his 1320 to the strip and ran an 1166 with a 165 60 foot. Do you think it could keep up with cats in the 8th? I know for a fact it would. So that car will run in the 8th. It'll probably be like a 770, 760 car, right around in there. And that'll be plenty to give a Hellcat all the pain in the ass it can handle. And in really good air, your car is actually a little bit quicker than that. In really good air on the Nexans, in as delivered from the factory wheel and tire combination, but with the passenger seat taken out, we were running 1140s last year with a pair of 1320s. So, and that's bone stock tune, 93 octane, this gasoline, and there's nothing to it. So a little bit of natural race prep and you can get the thing down really low, and at 1160 is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. The car's quick. So yeah, it won't be as fast, but I will tell you this, it'll be potentially more consistent, and you will get out on the Hellcat for about the first, I would say 50 feet of that 60 feet. You're going to nose ahead of him because the 1320 just reacts so quickly. It's one of the fun things I like about the 1320, and really like that car a lot. I got a super major soft spot in my heart for 1320s. Very sentimental reason. Rip saying, I don't think it could keep up with the Hellcat in the 8th. I got a 1.560 foot with my Hellcat with stock on good tires. Yeah, most guys don't get 150, 60 foots out of their Hellcat on stock on good tires, not with a 263 anyway, or a 262 rear gear. Most of them are going to be in the low to mid 160s, but yeah, it depends on the driver, honestly. But driver for driver, Hellcat's always going to be stronger, but it'll be a fun race because it's an 1/8 mile. And I hate to tell you this, but you get out on somebody in a Hellcat that doesn't react quickly enough, if nothing else, you're going to be showing him ass all the way through the traps. Brian saying, hey, buddy, I have a question, and I only really could take your advice. The piston rod on my 6.4 Hemi and my Jeep SRT snapped. It took 5 months, but I got a new engine under warranty. Should I keep it? Everything is out of warranty now. Do you think it would happen again, or should I just stick with the new engine? Hold on. How did you snap a rod in a stock truck? I have never heard of a 6.4 rod letting go, even in something as heavy as that Jeep. So that to me sounds more like a manufacturer's flaw. It would be the only one that I would have ever seen. So if you like that truck, keep it. It's got a brand new engine in it, but I just am surprised that it would have done that. That sucks. It's great that you got a new engine though. Him saying, I'm waiting to see what the used market does and want to see the new Z. The only car that would get me out of my 18 Scat Pack would be a 19 or 20 Challenger Hellcat, and those prices need to come down. Yeah, I get it. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just really expensive right now. Chuck saying, hello, B. What's up, man? Nuclear saying, the issue with EVs, though, is the range problem. Use the AC or the heater during the winter. Watch your range melt. And every single recharge, you lose a small percentage of range overall with the vehicle. Yeah, and I'm not sure how EVs fare in northern climates versus southern climates, and there's a lot that that come into play with that. I know that the batteries are good to 90%. The current batteries are good down to 90% over the course of 10 years. Is that a lot? Is that not a lot? I don't know. I know that with EVs also, one of the things that I've heard with guys that daily EVs is that in every single normal circumstance that they would be driving their gas car, the EV car is just simply a lot more reliable and a lot more convenient, I should say. Reliability, it's every bit as reliable, but it's just a lot more convenient. Only because you don't have to go to the gas station. They just, again, fill it up in the garage. The only downside is, let's say you're getting back from the grocery store, you're dragging stuff into the house, you get into the house, the wife is, nah, and the kids are, and the dogs are, arf, and, and all this other stuff going on, you forget to plug the thing in. That could potentially be an issue. But, you can't just go down to Exxon and fill her up full of electrons. It doesn't quite work like that yet. But it's coming, I'm sure. But anyway, I get it. There's always going to be a trade-off for those things, and I should say not convenience, but I don't know, the compromises that you have to make. The kid saying, "What's up, man? What's up, man?" He's saying, Thursday at the drag strip, I went against a plaid. It was hilarious. I ran a 12.1. He ran a 9.2. I have it on Draggy, and I might post it with his tail, what his tail lights look like. I know, it's crazy. He's saying they sound like RC cars drag racing. I like it. LMH is asking, what are your favorite sounding mufflers on a Challenger Hemi? Stock, Super 10? Oh, man. Okay, so I like, for the scat packs, I like the stock system with a reso delete. I think that sounds really good. A little bit drony, but if you do a stock muffler with a reso delete, you can put just any generic 3-inch race bullet back there, and it'll kill a lot of that drone. There are a couple of I guess you'd call them custom setups that I've heard that sounded pretty good, but they were double resonators. Basically a resonator at the tip, and then like a larger 3-inch, like a 12-inch race bullet or an 18-inch race bullet. It's very similar to what the Hellcats have from the factory. Those sound really good because they'll have like a nice deeper tone. What I have not heard, and I'm still looking for this, is I would like to, at some point I may switch out catbacks on my car. And what I'm looking for is twin resonators up front, maybe 2 resonators out back, small ones, but with an H pipe instead of an X pipe. I'm not a fan of X pipes. I just, the way that X pipes sound, especially when you don't have enough of a muffler back there, they start to sound really shrill, and it's a pitch of the sound. H pipes will have a balanced, deeper, kind of a more harmonious tone to them. Whereas the X pipe, because you've got sound waves that are literally slamming into each other, you're compressing the sound waves. And so it when you compress a sound wave, it gives it a higher pitch. And so they just sound kind of shrill. I've heard muffler delete, full muffler delete cars, and it would have sounded better if they cut the pipe about 18 inches past the catalytic converter and just left it alone with that. It is so, in fact, it's so horrible sounding. Listening to one of these things with a full muffler delete. We had a Hellcat that had a full muffler delete that every time that thing would go on the dyno, I would put in earplugs and the muffles, and I would like sit there and it was so loud, and it sounded like we've had cars on the dyno that sounded really good, and they were loud as hell, but they sounded so good. And that thing, they just sounded like ass. So anything with an H pipe would be good. And I haven't found one yet, but I haven't really been looking. But that is actually on my list of things to do to the car once the crank gets pinned and I get some time to start focusing on the Hellcat a little bit more. I am going to be looking at a different catback that eliminates the H pipe and instead goes with an H pipe, eliminating X and going with the H. Sorry. Brian saying he never heard of it either. Apparently, it's a factory defect of the piston. Oh, I thought it was a rod. But anyway, it might have been the. He might be talking about the wrist pin. Oh, damn. Yeah, I'd never heard of that either. Either way, I've never heard of it. Riff saying, just wanted to point out that I love my Demon Springs on my Cat, but they're definitely for performance, not looks. It raised the car up, unfortunately. Yeah, and they one thing about the Demon Springs though is that they do ride nice. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, they just kind of float along. So, but yeah, they do definitely raise the car up just a little bit. Mr. 300C saying, B Mason, master of the craft, you should do a segment on the traps of going into debt during the building process. A lot of modders fall into that. So, and trying to be fast. So one of the things I've touched on that a little bit, and I tried to illustrate, the last time I tried to illustrate that was when I was talking about the cost to modify a Mustang versus leasing a Plaid for a year. And the way that it broke out was it was actually more expensive to buy the Mustang, modify it over the course of the year than it would have been to just lease a Plaid for a year. And the reason why I capped it at a year is because so many guys that go that crazy with modifications, boost and fuel systems and trans builds and all this other stuff, a lot of those guys don't keep the car for really any more than about 16 to 18 months. So it's not unreasonable, and it's actually, quite frankly, not uncommon for them to get rid of the car within about the first year of ownership. In fact, the clock really starts ticking at about the 9-month range. Not to mention, you're going to have the car down for a couple of months during that whole process. And what I was saying is that, this is how expensive it really is for the least expensive car to build up, if you're believing what you're being told. But it is a trap. And that's one of the reasons why I put up that poll as to how much are you willing to spend on modifications? Because right now, again, even if you take, okay, so let me reset for a minute and kind of get back to the topic that we were talking about. So the average salary, $55,000 a year. Let's call it 55, just because it's easy round number. And the Corvette from back in the day was about, in adjusted terms, $35,000. So if you take that through to its course today, what are the cars that would fall in line with that pricing schedule? Well, get a smoking deal on a Scat Pack Core, and you might find yourself in about that same dollar per vehicle range. In other words, hours that you work for that particular vehicle, in essence. You might be able to come up with a Mustang GT base model for about that price. Definitely an RT, and a truck would probably fall in there as well. But again, these are all base models. So, I mean, you can still get it done today at those prices. But again, now you're going to start talking about modding these things. And mods, I'll put it to you like this. Real talk. You're not going to get out of this conversation for less than 15 grand. That is the cover charge to get into the club. That's just the way that it is. You start factoring in wheels, tires, tune, hard parts. The list goes on. And of course, it's only going to be as fast as your wallet will allow it to be. So that is to say that the more money you throw at it, just remember, guys, it's cubic dollars, not cubic inches, that wins races. And believe me, it can get nutty in a heartbeat. So you figure you're putting into the car, if we're talking 15 grand on a $35,000 car, you're basically talking about half the price of that car in modifications. How are you going to pay for it? Are you going to pay for it in cash? I mean, you'd have to, because if you put $15,000 on a credit card at even a low interest rate of 20%, most of them are like 25%, but at 20%, that 15 grand, if you hold that debt for a year, is going to cost you 3 grand. That's $18,000 that you're shelling out. 3 grand of it isn't doing anything but paying the credit card company. So you can see where the finances really start to run out of control here. Next thing you know, you're carrying the debt, and you got to get out from underneath this thing. The walking around number really is, to get the cars to run right with the right modifications, more like $20,000. Now you're looking at $4,000 in carrying costs. That's $24,000. That's basically almost the cost of another used version of the new car that you're talking about buying. What? They say you got to pay to play, but I don't want to have to sell my soul to be able to play this game. Which is more or less the situation that you're going to find yourself in if you fall under those categories of average salary, average bills, average build on one of these cars to do it right. And oh yeah, didn't take one thing into account. What about in a scenario where you don't build it the right way? You guys know that I always say build it from the bottom up, from the back to the front. If you go the other direction and put just power into the thing, and you go out and scatter this thing to the 4 winds, you got oil pump gears going over here, you got rods going over there, pistons are getting bomb shotted to the moon. Now you've got a $10,000 or $12,000 repair bill on top of your $24,000, or at least in this case, you didn't spend the money. So $12,000 worth of mods that you've already done for boost, and this is still keeping with the Mustang theme, or provided that the transmission hasn't been turned into basically a discombobulated erector set. You get the idea. Failure is an option always with these things. And unless you've got a budget that allows for that, again, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you can't just walk away from the problem. You're going to have to fix the thing, or you're going to default on the car all the way around. And now you've got thousands upon thousands of dollars that you're not going to be able to reconcile. It's a terrible trap to fall into, and a lot of guys fall into it. Happens regularly. And this is assuming that you're working with a very reputable shop that's going to have your best interests at heart. How many of those are out there? See what I mean? It is a dangerous game that you're playing, not only with your sanity, not only with your mental health, not only with your finances, but this could be a long-term play that you just don't really ever recover from. So let's review. $20,000 in mods, assuming that you don't blow the thing up. $4,000 in carrying costs puts you at $24,000, plus we'll call it $35,000 just because somehow or another we got this thing on a fire sale. That's what, $60,000 that you're into this car for, and hopefully you can get something out of it, assuming that you don't break something along the way with it. That's a lot of bread. That's a lot of hours you got to work, man. And I just don't know that I would be the guy that does it. So I've been the guy. I've eaten a lot of beanie weenies, a whole lot of ramen and tuna to get cars, to see cars through and to not be shackled with the debt that comes with building one of these things. So believe me, when I say I've been there and done that, there's people reading from a book that I wrote long time ago on that subject. So Brian's asking, what was the best mod for horsepower increase that you put on your Hellcat? We got to remember that the Hellcat doesn't really have any mods for horsepower. So the tune, I mean, when I tuned the car, I just added fuel. In fact, the timing is only interpolated in one small group of cells, and it would only accommodate extremely good density altitude conditions. It's really, there's nothing to that car other than added fuel. So, you know, I've been able to, let's see, I've been able to run a 1012 at 136, 137 miles an hour with that car just on regular 93 octane. Nobody else has been able to pull that off. A ton of 10 teens. So that's it though. I'm not really going after any more power with it. Let's see. Abby's asking, when are you going to give Foxy some love on the channel? I just gave her some love not that long ago. A couple of driving videos, really though. Nothing more than that. When am I going to give her some love? I don't know. I may do like a walk around or something like that with her. Which reminds me, when this is up, I got to go see if that battery tender is actually done tending the battery yet. But there's a couple of videos of me driving it, and if you like sounds of the 90s, they're definitely the video for you. One of them is a draggy video, and the other is just a video of me driving it, going through the gears. Rip is saying, for me, the best mod on the Hellcat was going to E85. You know what's funny? I haven't gone E85, although Brendan did ask me to look up, was it Flow Dynamics E85 kit, and it's a pretty ingenious kit. It's a signal intercept, and it uses a GM sensor that fits in line on the back of the engine on the crossover, I believe is how they're installing it. Anyway, long story short, it's a signal intercept that has a Bluetooth interface that will go to your phone, and it'll just tell you what your percentage of E85 is. And the signal intercept will also, I'm assuming this is how it works, will adjust injector pulse width accordingly for the percentage that the sensor is telling the box, basically. A pretty clever contraption. Just one drawback. Number one, I hate the marketing that they're putting this thing out there with, because they're saying no tune is needed. You'll pick up 70 horsepower with E85, and it's like, oh, fuck, here we go again. Anyway, you still have to switch the tune, because even though you've got the higher octane fuel, you will still need bigger injectors. So there's that. You're gonna need a tune to get the most out of that kit. But it's kind of a neat kit, and it's neat in that, let's say you're running E85 in the car and you've got to put 93 octane in it. You can put the 93 octane tune in the car, and you're still going to have E85 in the tank, but it'll give you the ability to just put 93 octane in the tank and not worry about, okay, well, let me run the thing all the way down and I'm going to have to keep it out of boost. You don't have to do that. You just fill her up, put your 93 octane tune in, and away you go. But you still have to switch the tune over, and I think that's where a lot of guys kind of don't understand that it's a plug and play, but it's not a true plug and play in that it doesn't adjust or do anything with timing values. That's all set in the tune, and the intercept just only deals with injector duty cycle. A cool thing though, a very cool contraption, and it's a little gimmicky, but I'm a bit of a sucker for things that are kind of like that, because I can put together a tune with larger injectors for E85, and presumably I don't have to worry about going back and forth with any injector issues, operating system issues, or anything like that. I can just know when I put 93 octane in the tank, I have to switch over to my 93 octane tune. I can leave which would be the tune that's in it now, actually. And except for the injector data. And if, I want to put 85 in it, I can just put the 85 in and it really wouldn't matter. One thing, though, is I've never done a test. I need to get with a couple of people and see if they've done this. I've never done an A/B test at stock timing with E85. I have to holler bullshit on what they're claiming, 35 to 70 horsepower. And it's like, that's a whole hell of a lot. But I don't know. At least not at this boost level. At higher boost levels, I could see there potentially being a difference. But then you're going to have a tune for that higher boost level anyway. So anyway, so many things to consider. Mr. 300, thank you very much. Saying I appreciate the info. Hey, what's up? This is for the Gatorade Fund. My man, they don't have my purple Gatorade, but they do got the Powerade. You know how I feel about my purple Powerade. As a matter of fact, if you look right over there where my finger is, that right there represents everything that Kroger had in terms of purple Powerade. See, I like to think that they just get it from me, because when I go to the grocery store and I see purple Powerade, I buy all of it. I don't buy just one. I don't buy two. It's all mine. It all goes into my basket. And I'll even make an extra lap around that bitch just so other people can see what I got in my basket. That is literally everything that they had left. So, but thank you very much. That's my absolute favorite, is the purple, man. Nobody calls it by, it's not grape, it's purple. It says grape, but nobody says it's purple. Like, if they're a narc if they give you like the real flavor. If somebody says lemon lime Gatorade, stay the hell away from that sumbitch. He's going to turn you in. It's either yellow or green or pink. Pink's pretty good. Pink's good. Red, I'm not there with red. Red's always kind of, I don't know. Orange is really good. So I like orange. Grape's my favorite. Oh, what did I do just there? Anyway, no, purple's my favorite. And it was good too. So, but thank you. It's bump. Let's see. Monty's is saying, I have a 6.1 with stock injectors. Do I need Hellcat injectors for an E85? Yeah, although I would probably suggest not going with an OE style injector for E85. Rather see you get something like a Fuel One Bosch style ID 1000 fuel injector connection type of an injector, a Bosch style fuel injector. And the reason for that is they're rebuildable and they're cleanable in a way that the factory injectors simply aren't. So give Keith a shout over at Fuel One, let him know what you got, and he can straighten you out with what you need. Oh, Ripped is just saying, yeah, I think it'd be a trans tune in terms of getting the most performance out of the car. Now, if the question is, what mods have given me the most performance, it would be the 309 gear and the transmission tune. And more to that point, the transmission tune, more than anything, really. So saying you got the FX series from Flowmaster, sounds good at throttle, but a lot of drone at 60. Stops the drone at 65. That's on my 5.7. Got rid of that fart noise when shifting. Nice. Oh, KDC saying, hey, Mason, I can tell you for sure that modding my 5.7 with one of your cams was the best $5,000-ish I've ever spent on that Challenger, hands down. That Joker cam, long tubes, and Borla S-type turns heads. Yes, it does. And it also hurts a lot of feelings too. That combination is probably, if I had a car, if I was just going to do a build, it would, man, I'm teetering on a 5.7. And if I were to do a 5.7, that's what I would do. It'd be Joker cam, stand keys, PSI 15, 16s, 080 push rods, ported intake, 85 millimeter throttle body, long tubes from Cook's, 1 7/8. Pick a cat back and 373 gears. And that would be one of the dirtiest little cars on the street. I don't care what number that it would run. It may or may not ever see a drag strip, but that car on a tire on the street would be a pissed off little car. And I'm telling you, it would be a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun. So I'm glad you're having fun, man. That's the most important thing to me. And I love that combination. So it's one of my favorites. Oh, Brian saying he just found the repair receipt and said number 7 came apart. Yeah, number 7 hardly ever fails like that. So yeah, that's definitely a factory defect. Chuck saying modding is better than getting it done. You can do it in stages. Very true. Harley saying no credit cards. Hilton saying I still want to get a manual 5.7 Challenger and build it how you suggested in your great 5.7 video earlier this year. I'll tell you what, the best car to further that point would be Dr. Differential's dad's car. I mean, that thing's stout, runs good. So, always recommend stanky tie bars and collars. Install the collars at 5,000s with a at 5,000s with your feeler gauge. And it's just a good little package, man. It really is. Limit it to about 6,700 RPM, 6,600 RPM, right around in there, and get out there and let her rip, because they are a ball to play with. Oh, Joshua was checking in saying he got his 2003 1500 Dodge 5.7 for 100. Nice. Getting ready for a rebuild. Rich saying I went through so many problems building and modding my 6.1 in stages instead of just doing it all at once and doing it right the first time. Same with the Hellcat. My thing is this, man, I have learned that I don't buy used parts anymore. And if I buy new, I'd rather cry once than cry twice. And if I'm buying new, I can buy exactly what I'm looking for. It's been rare for me to actually find something used that is exactly what I'm looking for. As a matter of fact, if it weren't for one silly little fact about my car, I would not have bought it. You might say, what's a silly little fact? First world problems. Look, I get it. But my Hellcat is Redline Red, which is the color that I wanted, has the Alcantara and interior Alcantara seats, which I really wanted. And I remember thinking if I were ever to build one, I would have to do the red seat belts. And sure as hell, my car had red seat belts. So it was the color that I wanted. It was the year that I wanted. I didn't realize this, but it was the birth date that I wanted. And it was the red seat belts as the option. So I was like, you know what? And it was the price that I wanted. I mean, it was just a good deal for me all the way around. And again, Mr. 300, my friend, I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Sovereign saying, I like blue Gatorade, Glacial Freeze. Glacial Freeze ain't bad. Sam saying, haven't been up in a while. What's up? Everything. Blood pressure, rent, you name it, taxes. Sovereign saying, sweet. Modern Red saying, I had my 5.7 Pro charge since October. Lasted year and run 10s on stock bottom end. Oh yeah, you can definitely do that with that car. Not a problem. George is asking, how do you feel about a forged internals and Hellcat supercharger on a 392 Hemi? I think you can do better than that. I think that first, see, here's the thing. You don't need forged internals for a 392 with the supercharger. All you need is to open up the ring gap, honestly. But I see where you're going with that. So if, in other words, if you're going to open it up anyway, just put the cylinders in or put the pistons in that you want, um, rods and just, ring gap where you want them. So I get that 100%. By the way, ring gap, if you're still on, I would say ring gap at about 26 thousandths for the second ring, and a minimum of 25 thousandths for the top ring. But anyway, the Hellcat supercharger, I probably would go with the E-Force tuner kit with that. It's just a little bit more of an efficient supercharger, and looks clean. So I would probably go that route. But Hellcat supercharger is good too. You got to remember that Hellcat was developed off of the 6.4. So, but I would probably go with the Maggie instead of the IHI blower. Chuck's asking, what is the difference between a Joker cam and a Comp 274 cam? A lot of differences between the two cams. Joker's going to have a lot tighter lobe separation angle. It's going to have less duration on the intake and exhaust. It's going to have a little bit less lift. Okay, so let me break down the Comp 274 for you. The Comp 274 cam is a really good positive displacement supercharger cam. If I were building a positive displacement 5.7 or 6.4, I would probably look at that Comp 274 as a good place to start. Not the best, but if you happen to be able to get your hands on one, it ain't half bad. I've seen that cam put in work with supercharged applications. Positive displacement though, not a centrifugal supercharger like a Pro Charger or Vortec or anything like that. Joker cam is really more of a good overall street strip power cam that will take power adders like a champ, by the way, and will okay, so if you don't know, the reason why I named it Joker is because it's actually a nitrous cam for a 5.7. Joker, laughing gas kind of goes together. And not to mention, it just puts a big stupid grin on my face because it sounds so good. So Joker it is. Again, a little bit more duration on the intake and exhaust to manage about 100 and 150 shot of nitrous on a 5.7. It just happens to be a fantastic NA cam for that car too. So Joker cam, PSI 1516s, the 080 push rods, full set of Hellcat lifters, and Stanky tie bars and collars are what you need to make that kit complete. And it's a lot of fun. So, but that's the main difference. Monitor said, "Oh, run 8.5 pounds of boost." Chuck saying, "Modern Red's here." Yeah, that's really all you need to run a decent number anyway. Modern's hanging out. Let's see. Michael was saying, thinking of going to an 18-inch wheel on my Scat Pack. Do you know of any issues I might run into? Not with an 18. No, you're good. George's asking if I had any choice of stroker kit, 426, 440, 454 for an NA build, what would you want? It depends on what I would be doing with it. If it's a street car and I'm going to be playing with it only on the street, 426 or a 440 would be fine. 454 is getting a little bit on the big side. I would probably say that I would hold off on the 454 unless I was doing a nitrous build and a build that I would be tearing apart every couple of years. But the 426 makes plenty of power. The 440 does plenty good too. If I was keeping the car fairly local, I'd go 440 between the two. But if I was looking to do like road trips and things like that, the stuff that I personally do with my car, I'd stick with the 426. And just make sure you keep the compression around 11 to 1. HU saying, I own a Pro Charge Mustang. I burned out 2 sets of cats. I replaced them with Cook's Green Cats. After a year and a half, one of them is on the way out. Any ideas as to what the problem could be? Yeah, you're not running enough timing. Your EGTs are just really, really high, and the cats just aren't really set up to be able to deal with them. I would venture a guess. In fact, I said this in one of the videos I literally just got through putting together about timing and the fact that a lot of guys will chop timing on a tune in an effort to make it safer. But the problem when you chop timing, at some point you are, in essence, you're blowing down that cylinder when you chop timing. And the issue with that, what I'm getting at, is that when the exhaust valve opens up, you still have a significant amount of unburned fuel and pressure in that combustion or in the cylinder itself. That extra heat gets blown right past the exhaust valve into the manifolds and into the cats, as opposed to that heat being used up to make power, and then any excessive heat is dissipated into the cylinder head, the valves, valve seats, and everything else. So I would say that a good trick to do would be to lower boost a little bit and maybe add a couple of degrees of timing to it. Check EGTs. You might notice that they come down a little bit. So that's what I would suggest. KDC saying, hey, from your experience, what do you think that I'll spend on well-suited quality suspension setup for a 5.7 Challenger, because I'm just about done adding power and now I just want a hook? Well, the thing is that the stock components don't suck. Put a diff brace on the back of it, and quite honestly, you don't have anything different back there than any Scat Pack or Hellcat has got, and we're all cutting 150, in some cases 140, 60 foots. If you want to go with a set of trailing arms, BMR sells some that are about $100, and that might be kind of a fun place to start for you. They're very, very easy to install. In fact, it will absolutely take you longer to collect your tools than it will to actually do the swap. I've got a video on that in my how-to section if you need help with that on those BMRs. I've also got a how-to with the Spawn suspension kit, which I really wouldn't recommend for the street because they're noisy. You'll think something's broken back there every time you drive the thing. And it really didn't help a lot in terms of wheel hop or getting the car to hook better or anything like that. About the only thing that did help a little bit was the BMRs, and that was to a lesser extent. That with a diff brace, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. You won't be spending too much on that. Again, 100, 130, I think, maybe for the BMR trailing arms. I haven't priced in a while. I'll say 130 just because it's a guess because everything's gone up in price. Diff brace, whatever performance is getting for the diff braces, just pick one. It doesn't matter. Just when you do install them, the diff brace, when you do install those things, don't wrist like crazy the locator bolts that are in the actual cradle. Just get them to where you have some torque on them, but just get them to where they that diff brace. Where a lot of guys go wrong is they torque the living crap out of them. What that does is it'll actually force the pinion up. You don't necessarily want that. You want to let the thing have a little bit of give to it. By over torquing them, you basically lock the thing into position, and that's really not good for for that type of a setup. It still has to have a little bit of play in there. I'm hoping I got to everybody. Again, Mr. 300C, thank you very much for the contribution, my friend. I do appreciate that. Roy Morgan, my man, thank you very much for the $10 for the bills. I like it. So getting back to the cost of these things, man, look, I get expensive, and everything has far and away more features now than they did back then. Look, cars back in the day, and everybody likes to talk about back in the day, back in my day, it was, look, back in the day, cars were about as sophisticated as a riding lawnmower is today. And if you think I'm saying that just for hype, it's basically true. Ignition switch, starter, throttle, brakes, clutch. But the only thing you're missing is a radio and some roll-up windows and a windscreen. Carburetors, I mean, it's the same thing, transmission. So because they were about as technologically sophisticated as your average tractor, you can see why there wasn't a whole lot of cost involved in them. As a matter of fact, you could probably make a case that by today's standards, they would be significantly overpriced for what you were getting, especially at today's dollars. But the reality is that folks are having a harder and harder time affording these things. And when you start talking about mods and you get wrapped up into that conversation, and it's, for a lot of guys, we're into that. And I'm one of those, obviously, right? I mean, I'm into this stuff, and just there's nothing that I like more than finding myself immersed in, putting math together for, I don't know, compression equivalence tables and things like that. But for a lot of folks, it's hard for them to swallow the idea that they're going to go into debt and then go into a second tier of debt, which is an even higher tier. So you got to remember, if you put those mods on a credit card, $20,000 worth of mods, you will pay more in interest to the credit card company than you will pay to the company that is loaning you money for the car. So, and you're paying double duty on the interest. So let's say you're at 3% on your car loan, and that 3% is based on $35,000, and that's run through a 6-year payment. That would end up being, let's see, 3 through 9, 12 through 40 minutes, roughly, let's say $2,000 for the carrying cost for the car, and you've got $4,000 in carrying cost at 20% on that 20 grand. So you can see what ends up happening with this on the APR, the 1 year, versus this other car if you kept the car for the full term. It's crazy when you think that that's $6,000. $6,000, and you've got 50 grand into the thing. Your real amount that you're paying is, give or take, 10% of the cost of the car just in interest payments. So you got to be real careful with that. But again, it's the sheer cost of the car. It's the fact of the matter is that the entertainment dollars are so small, and the cost of the car is so great, it makes getting into it that much more difficult. So let's see. And for a lot of guys, it's a hill they're just not ready to climb. And I get it. And for guys that do, you can see why there's so much emotion tied up in this. And it's not like it's just disposable income. This becomes all of their disposable income. This is their net worth on wheels, basically. So you got to be. My preference, for your cars, drag racing type stuff, automatic all the way, especially nowadays. But the heavier the vehicle, the more it's going to favor an automatic transmission. Peyton saying deployed right now, and it brought my interest rates down a lot. Now's the time to get it. Have it wait when you get back, brother. Jeffrey saying, what up, B? How's it going? It's going good, Jeffrey. It's been a while. Coming up on our favorite time at the drag strip, negative DA, absolutely. Getting into the kind of the meat and potatoes of boost weather. Can't wait for that. By the way, you're going to see me doing a lot more 8th mile racing. So let's get into that. Elephant in the room has been the fact that Houston Raceway Park is shutting down. And, Houston Motorsports Park is not, and that's an 8th mile track. So if you guys did get a chance to see it, I did do one draggy video at Houston Motorsports Park. Fun place. I like 8th mile. I like Houston Motorsports Park. The layout's pretty cool. So I have always had fun with 8th mile. I prefer quarter mile, but in this day and age, I'll take what I can get. And the good thing is the 8th mile track is not that far from where I live too. So it's not necessarily right in my backyard, but it's a very leisurely cruise to get there. And I got to admit, running 8th Mile the other night was kind of a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. It's a lot more convenient. The racing isn't as fast. Everything happens really quickly, twice as fast, really. And well, more to the point, it's a driver's race every time. So it's a lot of fun. A little bit of a transition. It was weird to get out of the throttle so quickly, but I'm having fun with it. Peyton saying, "Oh, the interest rates are low at least while he's out there." Peyton's asking, "Do I have to wear a helmet or any other safety gear in my class?" Yes. So the safety gear is enforced. Best way to put it. The safety gear that is enforced is going to be a helmet and long pants, closed-toe shoes. That's basically it. I don't really have to wear a jacket. I think technically a fire suit is anything in the 10s or quicker, but most tracks don't really govern that too much. I would say that it would be a good idea if you start getting into the 9s to go ahead and suit up, because you just never know. And but I never don't wear some type of jeans. I always wear something that's denim. Let's see, what else? That's really it. Most of the cars today, the NHRA rules are very fluid in terms of what they are requiring these days. But I can tell you that like, for example, the requirement for parachutes. If the car from the factory goes over 150 miles an hour, like the Plaid, they're not requiring parachutes for that car. And conversely, if the car is any quicker than what is it, a 950? I'm a little bit late in terms of the rules right now with these things, just because the late model cars, just there are no rules associated with them because most of them aren't fast enough to really trigger anybody's interest. But a cage, nobody's even looking at cages right now unless the car is running in the 8s. So, I mean, I know it's sounds a little bit nutty to be running these kind of numbers and you're not even running a cage in the car, but modern cars, the way that they're built, it's kind of like they've got a cage in them already. Not quite as a full chromoly, certified cage, but no real reason to have to run it, again, because the car is coming from the factory running as quick as they are. For example, the Hellcat was certified by NHRA as a 1085 car, 10.85, I think at 125 miles an hour, 126, something like that. Speedfreak's asking, "Hey B, are bead locks able to be mounted in your garage, or do they need special tools or air compressor to seal the rear bead?" No, you can. I've heard of guys just throwing tires onto the bead locks, tightening down the bead locks, and going from there. You always want to go in a star pattern, or at least an opposites pattern when you tighten them down. I've heard of guys doing that and then just hitting them with air, but I've never really messed with bead locks too much. The last time I messed with even had a set of bead locks on the car, they weren't even mine. So, but yeah, I've heard of guys doing that. I don't think you'd have too much of an issue with it. I mean, yeah, it's true of any tire, though. I mean, you could technically throw any tire onto the rim in your garage. The only downside is getting them balanced. And bead locks can be a little bit of a troublemaker to balance. They're a little bit heavier, and the tolerances in terms of weight for some manufacturers isn't as great. So you can end up in a situation where you get a lot of weights onto those things. So if they're only being used at the drag strip, might not be that big of an issue though. So. But anyway, getting back to it, the topic really was more for me to let you guys know what I had discovered along the way when I was putting that C8 video together. Just how much these things cost nowadays. I mean, the average car is extremely expensive from a per hour worked versus per amount of car you buy. And that's just to say that if this ruler is the car that you buy per hour of work that you work, how much of that car does it buy? And that amount has become less and less and less per hour that you work. So the main idea is to come away with this is, we're living in completely different times. The vet is no longer the working man's hero, working man's aspiration to get to. If you're making average money, you just ain't going to get there. And so what car would be? What cars would be in that case? Well, Scat Pack Core, Mustang GT, RT, it would be another one. These are all cars that you could get out there and have fun with and wouldn't necessarily break the bank. You get all the theater, all the rush, all the speed. It's just that it's not going to be a supercar the way that the vet is posturing itself to be. And you won't have that, the Hellcat or GT500-esque performance experience. But I'm gonna tell you this: having owned a Hellcat, stock boost Hellcat, but having lived with that car now for a number of years and having driven literally every fast combination that there is for a Hellcat. Stroker motors. This is with a Hellcat. Stroker, Whipple blown, double pulley with a gear, the whole, just name it. I've driven them. The one thing I came away from, this is one thing I definitely want to leave with you guys. The numbers are impressive once you start looking at how much power they're making to the rear wheels, the numbers that these things will run at the drag strip. All of that stuff is real impressive, and I love it just as much as you guys do. But one of the big things that I came away from was just how satisfying the Scat Pack cars are to drive. There is something about a 1320 that will always melt my heart. There's something about the Scat Pack setup in general, especially with the new operating systems from 19 and up, that are just so good and so much fun to drive, that I will still argue that they are a better value in that you can use more of that car on the street than you can with a Hellcat. Hellcat, you have to be on something sticky for it to even remotely hook up. Scat Packs, you don't have to worry about that. You put a drag radial on the back of the thing and have a ball with it. So looking at it, I was like, okay, well, yeah, the Vet's a lot of fun, I guess, and it better be given the cost of the thing. But in the real world, does Nuremberg lap times really matter? I mean, I don't even know what the hell is supposed to be fast around the Nuremberg ring. Everything is fast nowadays. And every driver is a little bit different. Every driver has a different skill set that they bring to the table, a different understanding or knowledge about the fastest way to get around that ring. And they give them unlimited number of tries at it. They just take the best of whatever, 30 or 40 laps that they ran. Whereas, the average guy, average girl in one of these Scat Pack cars is going to have a ball with it. And between the cars that are affordable right now, which ones would I look at? Well, obviously the 1320, but the one takeaway I will tell you, if it's the Scat Pack, the Mopar stuff, their blessing is their curse. Scat Packs are incredibly torquey, very snappy car. But the problem with being very snappy and very torquey is that they have a funny habit of converting black tires into white tire smoke. So, which is great fun, don't get me wrong, but doing burnouts for 1/8 of a mile doesn't necessarily win you the race. Mustangs are a lot better at hooking up. They're a lot better from a roll race, but they're Mustangs, and they're not as big, they're not as comfortable, and they don't have that instant hit that the 392 just owns that driving experience. So again, what cars would I pick in that affordable, I put that in air quotes, price range? Scat Pack Core would be probably at the top of that list. Or a Shaker 5.7 would be pretty cool too. Peyton saying the cost to maintain, ceramic coatings, fluids, filters, alignments, tires, all of that. Absolutely. And then some. And I'm out there with, in fact, I was going to do that today and I ended up getting kind of tied up, but yeah, Chandelier was still, I'm waiting to do the whole, give her another spa treatment. Bust out the orbital and get after it. Speed's asking, have I ever driven a newer GT350? Yes, I have. Love that car. Every time I hear one nearing its red line, it makes me want one. So here's the thing. Buddy of mine had one. And I drove the car, and I came away with a couple of impressions of the car. First impression that I had was the interior of that thing was literally made for me. Like you would have thought that they took my measurements and then put the car together based on my inseam length, arm length, and everything. Love the clutch feel, love the way the shifter felt, love the doodads and the gadgets with the exhaust and all of that. When I drove the car, the one thing that I noticed is that it was really fast from a roll, and it was, in my opinion, desperately needing more rear gear. I thought a set of 410s, or I think it's 409s that go into that housing, would have been ideal. The 373, I just don't feel like is enough gear for that car. But they sound amazing. And but anyway, my buddy had that car for a grand total of 1,200 miles before he sold it. He bought it brand new. And I nearly bought that car. It was white, and there was a black one on the showroom floor, and I nearly bought that car. So that's how much I liked the car. But it needs a gear desperately to really get the most out of that car, just because it revs so high. So the other thing about the car that you can kind of take this for what it's worth, but the car was only fun at you're going straight to jail speeds. And I like cars that I can play with, that are lively, but that I can kind of play around with a little bit. And that car never gave me the impression that I would be ever be able to play with it. I think it took, it's put it like this. It's a car that seemed like it took itself way too seriously. The Hellcat's just down for a good time. And the Scat Packs, same thing. All the Mopars just all seem to be out for a good time. The Fords, very rigid, very, I don't know, nurse ratchety. The newer stuff, it's really good, and it's very sanitized, and it's very just precise, but I never felt like it would be a good time. I always felt like it would, with the right gear maybe, and maybe with, I don't know, just some kind of an attitude adjustment. The car would be a bit more fun, but man, is it nice to drive. I mean, it's a lot of fun to drive, and it needs a little bit more gear, and it'd be good. Sovereign saying Scat Pack's where it's at. Yep. Mr. 300C saying Helion Twin Turbo Sleeper Kit seems solid for Mustangs. What are your thoughts about it on Mopars? Well, the thing is I like turbo setups. I mean, you guys know from my experience and from my engine knowledge, turbos are the ultimate cheat code. And they don't care about altitude. They don't care about DA. They don't care about anything. If there is air to draw in, if there's enough air to draw in to match the manifold pressure that you are looking to get it to, the turbo will make that happen. Whereas superchargers can't. They're relying on the engine RPM to spin them, and then they will then draw in whatever is available, which is to say that if there's less atmosphere, they just can't make as much manifold pressure, whereas the turbo can and will, by the way, until it runs out of compressor capability. I would say that the twin turbo setups are getting better for the Mopars. And if you're thinking about doing it, yes, they're expensive, but the gain that you get with a turbo is such that, and the way that turbos come on, the way that turbos hit is such that if you're thinking about going boost and you've got the cheddar to make it happen, you go turbo first. Let the people putting it in worry about, and the engineers that design it, let them worry about packaging and everything else. Packaging is a nightmare for turbos, but if you get it figured out, you go with that kit every single time. And let me tell you the reason why. Number one, you're going to always make the power, and you cannot say the same about superchargers, whether they're positive displacement or centrifugal. The second reason is that they are typically easier on parts in terms of NVH and things like that. They're going to be smoother. They're just a smoother driving experience typically. Positive displacement, though, gets very, very close to that. In fact, there's a reason why most OEs, when they're looking to build bigger power, they will look to a positive displacement supercharger. ZL1, ZR1, Hellcat, Red Eye, Demon, all that. There are GT500. All of those cars rely on positive displacement superchargers, not turbos, for those reasons. Packaging, boost response, all of that. But when a turbo comes on, it comes on and stays on. And it can be pretty creepy when you're driving turbo cars. They just come on and they just keep pulling. And when they come on in the mid-range. And if you've never driven a big turbo car, or a car making a lot of boost with a turbo, they are a lot of fun to drive. But they're great in a straight line. You can't really modulate them the way that you can a supercharger. That's where a supercharger does have an advantage. You can modulate that throttle a little bit. Turbocharger, depending on how you have the thing set up, can be a bit more of a light switch, which some guys like, some guys don't. If you're just going to be showering down on the freeway and you're not worried about throttle control, then yeah, just slap that butterfly into its 90-degree position and enjoy all that sweet, delicious boost. But in general, yeah, for numbers, turbos win that argument every time. Now, the downside, another downside to turbos, everything is a compromise. You got to remember, all of these kits are on a scale, okay? Where the turbocharger lacks, there's a benefit for a supercharger. And within the supercharger family, where the positive displacement lacks, the ProCharger or the centrifugal supercharger will have an advantage. Centrifugal superchargers are great in racing. You can basically tailor your manifold pressure in terms of straight line power that you want to make, and then down low it won't overwhelm the chassis setup. It won't upset the chassis the way that a turbo can, because it just comes out of nowhere sometimes. You got all this power when you don't really necessarily want it. And positive displacements are great, but they're also heavy and generate a lot of heat. So there's always, again, trade-offs with instant throttle response coming out of that. positive displacement supercharger. I can go on and on. But the main idea is that if you're looking at the turbo kits, it's a pretty good place to start. And again, it will absolutely lay down a power. And to give you an idea, so the determining factor in terms of how much power a power adder will add to the rear wheels is all based around all things else being equal, density, altitude, and everything else. In other words, you got three cars sitting next to each other. Everything will have to come down to parasitic draw. Positive displacement superchargers have the highest parasitic losses because they have two heavy rotors. You have an inertial loss there. And you have the obvious step up to spin those. Big crank pulley, smaller supercharger pulley means it's being overdriven. Anytime you overdrive anything, it's going to be a parasitic loss. To give you an idea, that supercharger takes about 100 odd horsepower on a Hellcat. ProCharger, Vortec, Paxton, something like that. The belt-driven snail, basically centrifugal supercharger, is at roughly the same boost level, is going to make probably, I would say, make about a 20% less dent as far as parasitic loss. Actually, I take it back. It's really more like 6%. Usually, but depending on how that compressor is sized, it could be as high as 20% less. But here's the thing. Let's say it's 10% less, just for the sake of argument. You're going to lose all the torque down low, which is not a bad thing if you're trying to launch a car that's already making a ton of power. You don't need the boost down low, you need it up top, which is why you go with a centrifugal style supercharger. Turbos, a little bit different story, and you can bleed in boost. There's all kinds of tricks you can do with a turbo that you can't do with anything else. But the thing is, with a turbo, it has the lowest parasitic loss. If you're talking about 100 horsepower for a positive displacement, and you're talking about, say, 80 for a centrifugal supercharger, you may only be looking at 50 horsepower for a turbocharger setup. And all that power goes straight to the rear wheels. But again, just because you have more power doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It all depends on what you're doing with that vehicle, because each one of those boosting solutions, those power adder solutions, have their place. And if you pair the right one with what you're doing, then it's going to make sense. Well, another reason why you see all these really fast eighth mile guys and quarter mile guys run a centrifugal supercharger. And you go, well, damn, you could have all this torque down low if you just had a positive displacement supercharger or turbos. And they're going, yeah, we've already got torque down low. We don't need any more. That's why we're not running those power adder solutions. We're running a power adder that allows us to get out of the hole with the least amount of chassis disruption. And then when we need the power, it's coming on and it pushes us all the way down the track. So again, it just depends on what you're working with. That's how those driving experiences go. And I don't know, I kind of went off the deep end on that explanation, but anyway, hopefully that helps. Chuck saying spinning isn't winning. No, it is not. Definitely isn't. Sovereign saying Dodge Challenger is the car. I like it a lot myself. Sovereign saying place your bets on what Racer X has just ordered from the Mopar family. I'm thinking Super Stock or a TRX. Could be right. Ken saying, I have an advanced fuel dynamics kit on my stock Red Eye. No tune. It works flawlessly. Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. Car goes 991 at 139 with a drag pack and 400 pounds of weight reduction, 138 60 foot. Hey, Ken, did you, when you put the advanced fluid dynamics kit on your car, is it the stock tune? Oh, it says no tune. Okay, yeah, I just got through reading that. Oh, cool. That's very awesome. I'm looking into the kit. I've got to put injectors on my car if I'm going to run it. But, man, I don't know if I need to find out if at my boost level I need pumps. For E85, I may need pumps, but I may need to get that injected engineering set up if I end up going that route. So I'm a little bit on the fence, but that's cool. I'm glad that you have that and you're able to share that with me, because I have been very curious, and you've got some good data to go with it. So thank you very much. X is saying, great show going, Mr. B. Got the arm flex. I like it. Peyton saying, do you have a gas station you prefer? I want to avoid watered down 93 octane. I like Exxon. I've got an Exxon right up the street, and they always seem to have really good gasoline there. So, you know, I've never really, so I've only had issues with fuel quality from, like, I don't know. I had some fuel quality issues from an Oasis gas station. Never had issues with Buc-ee's that I know of. Exxon's always good. Shell's always been good. And I don't think I've ever had any issues with Valero. But those are the only ones that I've ever really logged or tried. And guys, with that, we are coming up on 2 hours, so I've got to wrap it up. I want to say thank you very much to each and every one of you. Would not do this without y'all. Love y'all very much. If you got to send it, don't bend it. Keep her shiny side up. Stay safe out there. Ray, miss you, love you, and we will catch y'all on the next one. And that is a wrap. Y'all have a great one. Adios.